Welcome to the Doo-Doo Divas Smells Like Money podcast. I'm your host, Suzanne Chin Taylor, CEO and founder of Creative Raven, the firm that helps wastewater industry contractors and manufacturers unlock the power of digital marketing, AI, and PR to boost sales and opportunities. Whether it's through our online marketing and lead generation programs or providing a fully outsourced marketing department, we are passionate about helping businesses in the wastewater and civil infrastructure sectors not just survive, but thrive in today's digital world. Each episode, I'll be bringing you expert tips and strategies to help you grow and succeed. Let's dive in. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Doo-Doo Divas Smells Like Money podcast. Today, we are visiting with Chris McDonald and Michael Martinez of CPM Pipelines. And we're going to have a really interesting conversation today about a new trenchless technology. Some of you may be aware of it, some not. And this is why I like to bring these kind of things onto the show to bring our audience up to speed on all of the various solutions and options that they may have out there. And so Chris is the president of the organization, and Michael is his regional manager based out of Dallas. And as they just told me offline, the ringleader and the assistant ringleader of this organization. So welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Well, Chris, just to kick it off, to give our audience a little, I guess, to frame this as to who you are and your experience in the industry, and then what drove you to this new technology we're going to talk about today. So with that, tell us a little bit about, your history in the industry.
So I started in the industry back in the late 90s with US Pipe and Foundry. So I was a factory salesman for US Pipe and Foundry, spent about 6-7 years with US Pipe and Foundry, transitioned to the distribution side of the business, trying to kind of learn a different side of the business that I hadn't been involved in previously. And then my ultimate goal was to start a manufacturer rep company. So, initially we were just selling, valves and gate valves, check valves, plug valves, things like that. But I tend to get bored quickly.
Okay.
So it just wasn't a lot of fun selling where you had the same product, the same systems that hundreds of other people had, just trying to compete on price and relationships. And, it just wasn't that exciting. So had an opportunity to bring some innovative new solutions to the US market that were pressure pipe rehabilitation based type solutions. So decided really to start looking for opportunities to pioneer new technologies versus, selling the same old typical commoditized stuff that everybody else was selling. So that's what kind of led to it. Learned about some things that were out there internationally that weren't yet in the US market, and just kind of decided there's no reason we can't be the people to introduce those products to the US market, just like in the past, how we would find these products from other suppliers in the US and then try to work with them. It's like, why don't we just find our own products? So that's ultimately what led to the opportunity to get our own trademark branded product, which is now the bullet liner system.
Okay. So tell us about, you mentioned pressure lines. Tell us about the applications for this technology, because we talk on the show a lot about, sewer rehabilitation, CIPP, pipe bursting, all those types of things. So what makes this very unique, and what has it really been ideally designed for?
I think the first thing you have to do is everything about gravity sewer pipes and CIPP for gravity sewer pipes, just forget about that.
Okay.
Put that behind you. Let's act like we don't even know about those things.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is pressure pipes are just much different than gravity sewer pipes. Mm-hmm. And Michael and myself and our team, we probably spend as much time at this point, having been doing this for probably close to 12 or 13 years now with pressure pipe. I feel like we've really kind of figured out a lot of stuff when it comes to pressure versus gravity. So what's exciting about our system is it's available for all types of applications. So you can use it for water. It's NSF approved. It's PFAS free, tested. We can use it for water applications. We can use it for sewer force main applications for pressure. We can use it for gas. We can use it for oil. We can use it for hydrocarbons. We can use it for high temperature. We got a high temperature project going in the ground right now with about 230-degree temperature water, chemical. So there's all sorts of there really isn't a pressure pipe application that we can't bring a solution to. So I had a lunch and learn today. It's kind of a quick story, but I always joke because at the end of our lunch and learn, somebody always says, "How does your product cure?" And I always say, it doesn't. This isn't a cured in place product. It's a reinforced fabric solution, right? So one of the guys that was on the call said, he put a note up in the chat and said, "Your product is the cure."
That's
So
good.
I thought it was pretty clever. I told him I was going to steal that and use it, and he's going to see it right away on your podcast that I stole mine. But so there's all sorts of applications, and even the system we initially brought to the U.S. market 12 years ago that we were the first to introduce to this market, they can't do half the type of applications that we now have open to us with the bullet liner system. In addition to the fact that we can now do anything from 2-inch all the way up to 64-inch.
Wow.
So of course, the US market is full of large diameter transmission mains, 36-inch, 42, 48s, 54s. There wasn't anything out there that you could go long distance, through bends, complicated geometry until this came along and until we introduced it 3 or 4 years ago. So it's really unique. And it's one of those things that it's not a commodity. It's not something that everybody has. We get the opportunity to pick and choose kind of who we work with in the market. And, so it's been great and it's growing quickly. And we're excited to be in this position to really change how people approach fixing pipes.
Well, since you said offline that Michael was the expert in this to really explain it, for those who have never heard of this before, and that was a great point. People are probably thinking in their mind the traditional CIPP or that type of methodology for trenchless, that you could do this in pressure pipes. There have been other things that have been on the market for relining. What makes this so different? Because they're going to think, I know the audience is going to be thinking in their mind, how do you compare and contrast? But how does it actually work? And maybe take us through a typical installation. And then I want to kind of circle back on to what types of pain points do your customers usually come to you for to utilize this, where it's a really good fit to solve particular pain points.
Was that for me?
That was for you, Michael.
Oh, okay. Well, I apologize.
That was a lot of questions. That wasn't one question.
Right.
Well, so what's great about this is that, like Chris said, it's a new technology. So one of the biggest obstacles we have up front is when it comes to this type of infrastructure rehabilitation, you have a lot of civil engineers that are very much stuck with the tried and true types of methods. But in the modern, I'm sure you're aware, with the modern predicaments that municipalities, industries, pipeline owners are facing, is that they have aging infrastructure, aging pipelines. So they have limited budgets to repair, rehab pipelines. This technology is very new. And when they see the benefits as to what it can do, it's absolutely phenomenal. So to go to your questions, yes. One of the benefits is that, like Chris said, there's no curing process. One of the benefits is that, yes, we can pull this liner through long, long pulls as far as thousands of feet. So it allows a municipality to rehab large sections of infrastructure through bends, through, coming under and over railroads, siphons type of, predicaments. Um, and when it comes to, I guess, obstacles, uh, I guess the biggest obstacle would be, and again, like Chris mentioned, I had a lunch and learn earlier today where it's the owner loves the solution option, but when it comes to using it uniformly across their infrastructure, there are some limitations, which is like they will ask, can we pull through a valve? Can we pull through a butterfly? I got asked that multiple times
Hmm.
today. Can
Okay.
we tap it? And our solution is really based more for large transmission lines when it comes to water, or
Okay.
force mains when it comes to wastewater. Distribution, as far as, taps, I guess that would be our limitation. But when it comes to the large transmission lines of, like Chris mentioned, the 38s, I'm sorry, the 36s, the 48s, the 54-inch large transmission lines, this is a great opportunity for them to rehab a pipeline without spending the large mass of capital when it comes to dig and replace or CIPP or some of the more traditional methods of rehabilitating or repairing a pipeline.
Okay, so here's the $1 million question. What is it and how is it that you're able to bring it in at less cost for these applications versus your traditional, felt resin or UV?
Well, what's great is that the beautiful part of it is that it's a very simple product. It's a simple product in the fact that it's a poly in when it comes to the water wastewater infrastructure market, it's a polyester sock. We'll call it a sock
Okay.
that is then put through an extruder of a basically a pipe machine that extrudes polyethylene on the interior and exterior. This is the exact same type of method that PVC pipe manufacturers extrude pipe, uh, corrugated HDPE manufacturers
Mhm.
extrude their pipe. But what they do is it will extrude this plastic or this polymer inside and outside this polyester sock, which is great because when it gets extruded, it's extruded at the exact same time, so it creates almost a kind of like a molecular bond through the woven fabric. This creates an extremely strong fabric, and it allows us to be able to pull this because it has incredibly large adhesion strength. You can't pull it apart. So it allows us to pull it long lengths through 45-degree bends. And then when like Chris mentioned, we don't cure it like your traditional CIPP. What we do is we will inflate it, use air, bring it back to a shape, because when it gets manufactured, it is round. They will flatten it, fold it, put it on a reel, ship it to the job site. So when it gets installed, it will then get inflated and formed to the hose pipe, which is a close fit. And one of the benefits is that it will basically encompass the entirety of the inside diameter of the hose pipe. So if that hose pipe has a crack, a pinhole, or if there's which is unheard of, but a joint leaking, this liner will
That's
allow
a joke.
the sealing of these joints, these cracks, and these pinholes.
So would you consider this product then in the category of being structural?
It's semi-structural. Fortunately, the American Waterworks Association has classifications when it comes to M28. It's the manual for the rehabilitation of water lines. They have designations of classes for rehabilitating pipe, where it's basically from a class 1 to a class 4, basically from a spray-in liner, just strictly for flow characteristics of the inside diameter or the inside flow, to a fully structural pipe. Our liner is a class 3, which means that it is semi-structural and it will cover pinholes, cracks, joint leaks.
How about
So
flow hydraulics? Does it impact or improve the hydraulics or the capacity?
well, let's go back to the semi-structural component because that's
Okay.
really important. Um, you have to really understand how gravity pipes are manufactured. You have to understand how pressure pipes are designed and manufactured. So gravity sewer pipes are designed 100% strictly for structure and load.
Right.
So they handle all the live loads and all the dead loads up above the pipe. You have to bed them properly to provide support for the pipe, especially plastic or polymer type pipes. So, but it's strictly designed to deal with the load. And therefore, when those pipes fail, the failure that occurs is structural.
Okay.
So in order to fix or rehab a structurally deficient or failing pipe, you have to use a class 4 fully structural lining system. Okay, so now, and these are all the nuances between gravity pipes and pressure pipes. It happens with the way you inspect them, the way you install them, the way they operate. So now if you jump over to a pressure pipe typically fails because it starts leaking.
Ah.
Right? So if you have a metal pipe, if you have a ductile pipe, a steel pipe, any kind of pipe that's pressure that's metal, it's going to get a pinhole from corrosion. Those pinholes are very localized. So they're not spread out in broad areas. They're typically very localized. And what causes them to open up quicker is the mechanical erosion effect that happens once the media starts spraying through the small hole that's created from corrosion. So that'll accelerate the rate at which that hole opens up by 5, 10, 15 times, right? So when you look at a pressure pipe to rehab, they're typically 99.9% of the time still fully structural and supporting all the earth loads, the live loads, the dead loads over the top of them. They're simply leaking. So if you take
There's the distinction. Okay.
if you take a semi-structural class 3, which has to be close fit, it's very important. It has to be close fit to the pipe wall, no annular space. It has to bridge holes and gaps. It has to be semi-structural, rigid, and it has to be self-supporting. And you can design it to either fully interact with the hose pipe by putting a liner, for example, rated for 50 PSI into a 150 PSI operating pressure pipe, or you can create a liner that's rated for 200 PSI and put it into a 150 PSI operating pipe, where then you have very little transfer of any of the internal pressure to the hose pipe. The liner acts independent of the hose pipe in that case. So all you're trying to do to fix leaking pressure pipes is stop the leaks and provide some additional support. The hose pipe still provides all the structure. So what you get by placing a class 3 semi-structural lining system like a bullet liner system into a failing or leaking pressure pipe is a class 4 system. So you still have the structure from your original hose pipe. You have a watertight leak-proof barrier that takes all the pressure off the original pipe unless you design it to be interactive. So you actually end up with a class 4 system without having to necessarily put a class 4 liner inside the pipe. And if you put a class 4 CIPP liner that cures out, that's structural, that's rigid, if you have any kind of shear force or something like that, most likely that's going to transfer directly to that structural liner and cause it problems. With the way our liners are flexible, because they remain flexible the entire time they're installed and when they're operating, it'll move and adjust with movement in the ground or within the hose pipe, so it can account for that and keep operating perfectly in really extreme conditions. So I just like that's something we talk about all the time now. And if this is an opportunity to share that with people and educate people about it, it's really, really important that people understand those things.
Yeah, thank you for that explanation, because that was something I was trying to wrap my head around it myself, in that, people are going to automatically, contrast and compare to what they already know of what you said early on, forget everything you knew about gravity and CIPP, because this is an animal, or what they say, a horse of a different color completely. So thank you so much for that. Well, now here's a question for the contractors out there, because you're a contractor, you're doing these installations. Is this something that is a fairly easy, what would you say, shift or bolt on for someone that's already doing some traditional CIPP in the trenchless world for gravity, to be able to learn how to do this and offer this to their customers who have pressure pipe situations? What is it?
Yeah.
What is involved to learn how to do this?
So my background is mechanical piping and pressure piping, obviously working for US Pipe and Foundry. Michael has a great background in the same side of the business as I do, working for one of the main valve and hydrant manufacturers across the country and a couple pipe companies. So the challenge with somebody that's been working, and we have some great national partners like SAK Construction, for example, that's our national partner and installer for our bullet liner system, and their background's mostly gravity. What's the biggest challenge for somebody that's going from gravity to pressure is all the mechanical stuff. So all the typical civil utility work that's involved. So you have to dig holes. You don't have access. So if you put a CIPP liner and you're a CIPP liner company, you basically show up. The pipe's typically been cleaned. It's been camera inspected. You pop the two manhole lids open. You pull your liner or you invert your liner through the existing pipe. You finish curing it, you put the lids back on, you go down the street to the next one. Our process isn't obviously that simple. So we have to excavate at all of our access locations and dig holes. We have to cut and remove sections of pipe to give us access to the interior of the pipe to pull the liners in. There's a lot more extensive process required to dewater the pipe. If you want to dewater a gravity main, how do you do it? You plug one end and it runs out the other, right? Pressure pipes go like this. They go up, they go down, they go sideways. So if you open up both ends of a pressure pipe 2,000 feet apart, you may have a belly. It may go down 45 degrees under a road and back up. How do you get the water out of it to camera inspect it to see if you can line it? It doesn't just empty out. So, we have a lot of creative ways that we get the water out. You have to come up with really creative ways to get your camera work done because you have to get a video inspection to make sure there's nothing inside the pipe that could damage it. So there's a lot of skills that come with somebody that's doing civil work, not necessarily gravity sewer rehab work. But we have a lot of great partners that do a lot of gravity sewer rehab work. And a lot of times they'll just bring in somebody to do those excavations or put the pipes back together or help with the cleaning aspects. So you can certainly get into the business either way. It's just there's more things you're going to have to figure out if you don't understand the difference between a mechanical joint, a push joint, a flange connection. So if you don't know what these fittings are, there's a little bit more of a learning curve versus just going and doing the next gravity sewer or CIPP project.
Well, now that you mention excavation, one of the big things that everybody talks about for trenchless is the footprint and the least amount of disruption to the community. So I'd like to touch on that a little bit in comparing, since this is a new technology, you always know there's going to be resistance in our industry to trying something new. Oh, this is the way it's already been done. Well, does that mean you have to continue doing it that way? Well, yeah, another soapbox. Chris, you and I could have a whole nother episode on that, just getting on the soapbox about that. But in comparison to if they have to replace a line with a lot of leaks with excavation and replacement, how would you compare utilizing, and it sounds like there's, some excavation, but not a tremendous amount, just enough to give you your access. What are we looking at as far as timelines for a project to rehabilitate versus replace, and what that impact is on community? Maybe that's a question for Michael. I don't know.
He's done a real good job of answering this recently in a couple of presentations. So I think that's the perfect question for him.
So what's great is that this allows the municipality, the owner, to rehabilitate their water sewer infrastructure, minimizing the impact to the community because we only require small access points to the pipeline. And we can pull this liner several thousand feet, 2,000 to 4,000 feet. So as opposed to a traditional dig and replace where you are impacting the community, impacting the infrastructure of digging, replacing the pipe, now we are minimizing it to 2 or 3 certain points. Now, when you compare it to, say, for instance, like we've been discussing CIPP, this doesn't require large, I guess, semi truck type structures at these access points that require heating, UV type of thing, styrene, all the environmental aspects of it, to where it allows just simple pulling, inflating with just air, and it requires very minimal impact to the community. Once the liner is shipped to the job site, it is shipped on a very simple small reel where we take minimal footprint size to rehab large pipe diameters, large runs.
Well,
Excellent.
when it comes to the environmental aspects of it and impact, a perfect example. We just did a project in the Phoenix market in the last few months where we were able to rehabilitate about 1,000 foot of 30-inch pipe underneath the freeway. And that liner, that 1,000 feet of 30-inch liner, was on a reel that was 12 feet long, 8 feet wide, 8 feet tall. If you just look at, well, not even thinking about what it would have taken to get across the freeway, right? That's unsurmountable. You would have had to have done all sorts of stuff, dig 30-foot deep trenches, put slide rail in as far as shoring. But if you just look at what it would have taken to get the pipe to the job site, we basically had a reel that took up a third of a semi-tractor trailer for 1,000 feet of 30. If you had tried to ship 1,000 feet of 30-inch ductile or steel for a new construction project, you would have had shipping from wherever the closest distribution point was, probably 10 truckloads of pipe.
Wow.
10 semi-tractor trailer truckloads of pipe, who knows, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10-hour drives. So all the emissions tied to that, all the environmental impact, if you start digging up the road, you look at timeline. How long does it take to excavate 2,000 feet or 1,000 feet, 1,000-foot trench for 30-inch pipe? It takes some time. It also takes some time to haul all the spoils away from the job that you take out on trucks, bring in all the backfill material, bring in all the roadway material, all on trucks, where all the while we basically had a third of one truck and basically the entire truck maybe to get everything into that job site we needed, and nothing really to take out except the empty reel when we got done. So you probably see a reduction to the environmental impact with these types of jobs, 95, 99% even, compared to traditional dig and replace, plus the time.
Yeah, I was going to ask for that, if you had the figures on how long did it take you from the time that you deployed and got there onto the site, did whatever you had to do to set up and get your access point. How long did it take you to complete the rehabilitation of that line?
It takes longer in most cases to get access to the pipe than it does to rehab the pipe.
Wow. So how many days, Chris?
Like typical small projects, we'll complete in a day. We'll pull the liner, put the fittings on, tie it back. A big diameter project, a 30-inch project, 36-inch project, 42, 48. It's just mechanically, it takes a long time to put those things back together. There's lots of bolts, there's lots of connectors, things like that just take time to set. They're very heavy. They take time to set. They take time to bolt up. But even with that said, you can put a couple 1,000 feet of 30-inch pipe in once everything's ready to go. Within about a week's time, start to finish, from the time you start to pull, take a day to pull it, a day to inflate it, a day to put each one of the fittings together on each end to make the tiebacks. So within 4 or 5 days, you're back in service with 1,000 feet of pipe with 50 years of design life, a 5-year warranty. Most people don't realize most new products, new ductile, new steel, new plastic, they come with a 1-year warranty. These lining systems, whether it's ours or somebody else's, come with a 5-year warranty on the liner against any kind of manufacturer defect or issue.
Wow.
That's unheard of. Nobody offers that.
Wow. This is definitely, I am so glad that, you agreed to come onto the show, because I think this is something that people really need to start exploring as a new technology. And so with that said, where can they learn more about this solution?
Michael?
What's the best way for them to learn more about this?
So you can go to our website at cpmpipelines.com. you could go to the Bullet Liner website, which is bulletlinersystem.com. There's an info button that you can request information, share your project information, send us a message. We post a lot of stuff on YouTube at our CPM Pipelines YouTube channel. We also post a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. I think that's where we initially connected, right? Probably 2 or 3 years ago was on LinkedIn. So yeah, look for our stuff on LinkedIn, follow us on LinkedIn, and you can get a hold of us in a whole bunch of different ways.
That's great. Well, again, gentlemen, thank you for coming on to the show. Thank you for sharing this, great new technology. I hope that this is going to make your phone ring with lots of questions, and that maybe somebody out there, you learned something new today. I know I did. And so again, thanks so much for your time. And for those of you tuning in, thanks for your time. And until next time, keep it flowing. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. If you're ready to take your marketing to the next level and start increasing sales and opportunities for your business, reach out to us at Creative Raven. We're here to help you thrive in the digital landscape. Visit creativeraven.com or click the link in the show notes below to schedule a call and learn how we can support your growth. If you enjoyed the insights on today's episode, be sure to hit subscribe so you'll never miss an update. Until next time, keep growing and keep it flowing.